Either Switzer? Oh, yeah, it's the guy I listened to when I made my first billion. He's one clever son of a...
5, 4... We're online. The hottest internet station.
It's time for the Switzer Show with the guy who makes getting richer easier than running up a credit card bill, Peter Switzer.
Well, hello and welcome to the Switzer Show. I'm Peter Switzer. I'm on my own today. Paul Rickard is holidaying in Europe, the lucky so-and-so. And this program, of course, is designed to make you money smarter, business wiser, and generally more successful. On today's show, we catch up with Ms. Money, Nicole Pedersen-McKinnon, who says banks could sweep your redraw facility in your loan account, and that many of us are throwing away something like $134,000 because we have a dumb home loan. Then we'll catch up with Jane Lovell, the CEO of Seafood Industry Australia, with what I would call an unbelievably fishy story. And then we get employer-employee smart with David Bates, who is our go-to guy from Harmer's Workplace Lawyers. And now let's go to this very interesting story involving a lady by the name of Jane Lovell. And she is the CEO of Seafood Industry Australia. And apparently, we don't know where our fish is coming from when we go to restaurants and places like that. And Jane reckons we should know where it comes from. And she's agitating to make sure that that actually happens. All right, so Jane, tell us what you want us to know when we go to places like restaurants and we wisely select fish.
So, Peter, all we want is for people to be able to know the origin of the seafood that they're choosing to eat. Just like you can find out in retail with the fancy logos that came into force in July this year, we would really like consumers, when they dine out, to be able to choose Aussie seafood.
Mm. Is this a totally unique request, or is there some other place in Australia where this is actually happening?
Look, there's a few places where it happens. It's mandatory in the Northern Territory to call out the origin of seafood, and there's a number of ways that they can do that. But also in some of our what we would call white linen tablecloth restaurants, you would have seen that. I'm sure that often the origin, and even the regional details about the seafood are called out. So it can be done, and we know in the Northern Territory, some of the figures around the costs for doing that are quite modest. So we do believe it can be done. Okay.
So who, as I say, I would have thought the good quality restaurants, they want to tell us when they've got Coffin Bay oysters and whatever, and King George whiting from South Australia. So those restaurants seem to do. Who's pushing back against you on this particular issue?
Well, I think the main area of concern is probably the mid-range restaurants, and some of the feedback, so cafes, some of the feedback that we've received is that, you don't need to put it on the menu. There are cheaper ways of doing it. You can just ask the waiter, and the waiter will be able to tell you where that seafood came from. But, in our experience, that isn't the case. So we actually got some independent research done on that, Peter, and we found that in only 33% of the cases could the wait staff give you a credible answer to that question. Sometimes they say, well, it's from the ocean or it's from the fish market. This is not accurate information about the origin of your seafood.
Yeah, this is the kind of waiter that was involved in that joke, is a fly in my soup. Don't worry, sir, we don't charge for that. But that's not helpful at all. But look, let me play devil's advocate, because frankly, I'd like to know if my prawns came from Australia or Thailand or whatever. But I would imagine some of the restaurants would say, well, we have an expensive printed out menu. And if sometimes the prawns come from Thailand, sometimes they come from Australia, depending on price, that's really difficult for us. Is this the sort of stuff they're saying to you?
Look, it is, but I think you've really hit the nail on the head there. You're not likely to be paying the same amount of money for an Australian prawn that you're paying for an imported prawn. So if you're changing the origin of the seafood, you probably should be adjusting the price of the dish. So
they're coming the raw prawn, aren't they?
They may well be coming the raw prawn. Look, and we're not vilifying imports, and we're not, we understand that there are price points, and people, sometimes want to spend a lot of money on a seafood dish, and sometimes they don't, and that's fine. We just want for there to be transparency and honesty so that people know what it is they're actually buying. So what we've said in regard to that very point, if you are changing the origin of the seafood and it's imported, so if you're swapping between Thailand and Malaysia and Indonesia on a type of seafood, we don't expect you to change the menu every time you do that. Just use a little I, and that means it's imported. You don't have to call out the origin every time. And what we find for a price point, that's probably more likely the variation that's happening. It's a changing source internationally. It's not swapping between imported and Australian.
Yeah. Are they trying, the groups that oppose you, are they saying that you're doing this for other reasons other than informing customers about the origins of the stuff they're doing? Because quite frankly, I know my wife, is negative on some seafood from Asia, and her feeling is that they don't have the same tough standards that we have, and she might be right or might be wrong. But as a consumer, she's entitled to have those views. Is this what's really driving the whole issue?
So for us, it is absolutely being driven by transparency. We want the fantastic job that the Australian seafood industry is doing to sustainably harvest and sustainably produce seafood and to, take it through to market. We want the work of our people to be recognised. And at the moment, they're invisible. You can't tell when you dine out whether you're actually supporting a local fishermen and the local economy. We're absolutely not saying that imported seafood is of inferior quality or is unhealthy. That's not our remit. Yep.
And so, is anyone in governments is it always a federal or a state issue? Is anyone out there championing your cause?
Well, Peter, sometimes I feel like this is a little bit of a political football. Look, we have had champions, and I think, the current Federal Agriculture Minister, Minister Littleproud, has done some great work in and around this space. So he started a conversation about voluntary labelling in the fast food sector. So that's, it's not by any means the extent of the ask that we're looking for, the solution that we're looking for, because it's voluntary and it's only fast food. But I'm pleased to say that there's been some uptake with Domino's recently, on that front. So they're calling out how Australian each of their pizzas are. Sadly, a little bit further investigation there. I think the only pizza they haven't done it for is the prawn pizza. So I followed up with Domino's today to say, have you just left us off by mistake? What's going on, in that space? But I think we do face a bit of a political headwind. There are some states that are supportive, but everyone's sort of saying, well, maybe it would be better to be solved federally rather than having different states bringing in different rules, which is what we see with occupational health and safety, and it makes it very difficult for people that are trying to supply product nationally when they've got competing different rules in different jurisdictions. So a national solution is what we're looking for.
So I guess, the bottom line is this is not a fishy story where you're just trying to improve the economic capability of the local seafood industry. You do think it's actually a fair thing for consumers as well. Absolutely.
So, when consumers go into retail stores, so into the supermarkets, and they're given all of this information, the percentage of Australianness now, they can now tell about, a number of, the majority of products that are for sale. Yep. We don't understand how that consumer then goes into the cafe next door and doesn't care. So they don't stop caring. People don't stop caring because they're dining out. And all we want is the same courtesy to be provided. And that solution that does get put forward about asking the waiter, we've proven doesn't work. So we need a better solution.
Okay, Jane. Well, I wish you a lot of luck, and if I can help in any way, just let me know.
Thank you very much, Peter.
That's Jane Lovell, the CEO of Seafood Industry Australia.